Vian Carter, a loving mother and devoted teacher; Mark Carter, a successful architect with a picture-perfect life; Emma, Lucas and Ben, three bright innocent children. Together they were the Carters, a family that seemed too perfect to be true, but behind the closed doors of their pristine suburban home a chilling darkness was festering when Evelyn and the children were found brutally murdered. All eyes turned to the one person no one suspected, Mark Carter. What horrifying secret was he hiding that drove him to destroy his own family? The Carter family of Willow Creek seemed like the embodiment of the American dream. Evelyn Carter, a cheerful and compassionate kindergarten teacher, was known for her warm smile and kind heart. Parents in the community adored her, often praising her patience and dedication to her students. Her husband, Mark Carter, was equally admired as a successful architect with an impressive portfolio of projects. He was regarded as a man of precision and charm, someone people could trust implicit. Together they presented the image of an unshakable partnership, a couple that had it all figured out. Their three children added to this idyllic picture. Emma, their eldest, was a high school senior with dreams of attending a prestigious art school. Her talent for painting was evident in every stroke of her brush, and her work often adorned the walls of their home. Lucas, at 14, was the classic overachiever. Whether it was playing soccer or passing his math exams, he seemed unstoppable. The youngest, 10-year-old Ben, had a contagious curiosity and an unrelenting love for science. His room, a chaotic but fascinating mix of experiment kits and books, reflected his lively mind. Together the Carters were often the talk of neighborhood barbecues, family-friendly festivals, and holiday gatherings. Everyone envied their unity and their seemingly perfect lives, but perfection is rarely what it seems. In the weeks leading up to that cold January morning, subtle cracks began to form in the Carter family's immaculate facade. Evelyn, usually so full of life, seemed distracted during her weekly coffee dates with her best friend Zoe Martins. Zoe dismissed it as work-related stress, never suspecting that Evelyn was harboring a heavy secret. Mark, too, had begun staying late at the office more often. His charming smile at community events seemed strained, and whispers circulated about the financial health of the architectural firm he co-owned. Even their children showed signs of unease, but in a way only the closest observer might notice. Emma's art took on darker, more somber tones, while Lucas spent more time locked away in his room than on the soccer field. None of these signs seemed significant at the time, certainly not enough to raise alarm, but everything changed when Zoe Martin's concern grew too pressing to ignore. Evelyn didn't show up for work one Monday morning, an unusual occurrence for someone as dependable as she was. Her phone went unanswered and her car remained parked in the driveway. After a day of growing worries, Zoe decided to call the police and report her friend missing. When officers arrived at the Carter residence, nothing about the exterior seemed to miss the neatly manicured lawn, the wreath hanging on the front door, the quiet hum of the suburban street. All of it pointed to normally, but inside the air was heavy, the silence deafening. It was as if the house itself knew that something had gone horribly wrong. Investigators had no idea that the seemingly perfect Carter family was about to reveal a chilling and devastating truth. When police entered the Carter home, the initial impression was of a family that had left in a hurry. Plates with half-eaten food sat on the dining table, and a jacket was draped over the back of a chair as if someone had tossed it there absent-mindedly. Upstairs, Evelyn, in Mark's bedroom, revealed a half-packed suitcase, its contents spilling onto the floor, a few articles of clothing and toiletries, as if someone had intended to leave in haste. The children's rooms, on the other hand, were unnervingly tidy, their beds made and personal belongings neatly arranged. Despite the dryness, there was no immediate indication of violence, but the deeper police went into the house, the more unsettling the scene became. Drawn by an acrid metallic odor, officers descended into the basement. It was here that their investigation turned from a missing person case into a horrifying discovery. Beneath a pile of old tarps and building materials, investigators found what appeared to be concealed bodies wrapped meticulously in plastic sheeting. The coroner confirmed the unimaginable truth: the remains belonged to Evelyn, Emma, Lucas and Ben. Each victim had been carefully bound and sealed, as if the perpetrator had intended to hide their actions for as long as possible. The methodical way the bodies were wrapped, combined with the absence of overt signs of a struggle, suggested a calculated and deliberate act rather than a crime of passion. It also strongly implied that the killer was someone close to the family, someone they trusted implicitly. As police processed the crime scene more Clues emerged about the possible sequence of events. Trace amounts of an unknown chemical were discovered in the family's dinner leftovers, and Evelyn's personal diary tucked away in her bedside drawer hinted at tension within the household. In several entries she expressed vague concerns about things not being what they seemed. These small pieces of evidence painted a chilling picture of a family that might have been living under the shadow of an unseen threat. Our Carter, who was supposedly out of town on a business trip, quickly became a person of interest. Investigators tried to contact him, but his phone went straight to voicemail. His colleagues at the architectural firm reported that he hadn't attended any meetings or submitted any travel itineraries for the trip he claimed to have scheduled. As the hours turned into days without a word from Mark, suspicion mounted. The discovery of the crime sent shockwaves through the small suburban community of Willow Creek. Neighbors stunned by the news gathered in disbelief outside the Carter home, murmuring air confusion and fear. How could a family like the Carters, who seemed so perfect, meet such a horrific end? Rumors swirled, but nothing could prepare the town for the revelations that would soon come to light. With Mark missing and no clear motive in sight, the case grew darker by the hour. Investigators were determined to uncover the truth, but the secrets buried within the Carter family would prove to be far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. In the days following the gruesome discovery, the investigation into the Carter family murders intensified. Mark Carter, once the grieving husband and father, was now the prime suspect. At first he played the part convincingly. Returning to Willow Creek after the news broke, he made public appearances to express his devastation. Standing in front of cameras with tears in his eyes, he pleaded for answers and vowed to do whatever it takes to find justice for his family. His calm demeanor and carefully chosen words gained him sympathy from the community, but it wasn't enough to quell the growing doubts surrounding him. As the police dug deeper into Mark's timeline, troubling inconsistencies emerged. Records from his workplace showed no evidence of the out-of-town business trip he claimed had taken him away during the murders. His co-workers described his behavior in recent weeks as erratic, with unexplained absences and mounting stress. Furthermore, surveillance footage from a local hardware store the day before the murders showed a man fitting Mark's description purchasing duct tape, plastic sheeting and gloves, the exact items found in the basement alongside the bodies. The evidence didn't stop there. Investigators began to scrutinize Mark's financial records and found a hidden web of lies. Despite his image as a successful architect, his finances were in shambles. The family's picturesque lifestyle had been funded by mounting debt. Mark had taken out a secret second mortgage on their home and maxed out several credit cards without Evelyn's knowledge. Worse, he had recently out substantial life insurance policies on Evelyn and the children, policies that would leave him a wealthy man in the event of their deaths. These discoveries prompted the police to execute the search warrant for Mark's phone and laptop, which unearthed the more damning evidence. Forensic analysis revealed a trail of deleted emails and internet searches that hinted at premeditation. In the weeks leading up to the murders, Mark had researched poisons, methods of suffocation and techniques for disposing of bodies. One particularly chilling search stood out: how to stage a disappearance to avoid suspicion. Even with the mounting evidence, Mark continued to deny any involvement to the public. He maintained his image as a heartbroken father, but cracks in his facade became evident during his interactions with police. He grew defensive and agitated during questioning, contradicting his earlier statements and struggling to account for gaps in his timeline. Witnesses came forward with additional revelations that painted Mark in a darker light. A neighbor recalled hearing muffled arguments coming from the Carter home in the weeks before the murders, and Zoe Martin provided excerpts from Evelyn's journal where she had confided her suspicions about Mark's behavior. "I feel like I don't know the man I married anymore," Evelyn had written, a haunting reflection that now took on a chilling significance. With Mark unable to provide a convincing alibi and the weight of evidence stacking against him, the picture of what truly happened to the Carter family began to take shape. But even as investigators closed in on the truth, the darkest and most shocking revelations were yet to come. As investigators delved further into Mark Carter's life, the horrifying truth behind his actions began to unfold. The public, already reeling from the revelation that Mark was a suspect, had no idea how deeply his deception ran. What initially appeared to be the desperate actions of a man under financial strain turned out to be something far darker and more calculated. Mark had been embezzling money from his architect architectural firm for over 5 years, starting with small sums that went unnoticed. He gradually siphoned larger amounts to sustain the lavish lifestyle his family believed they could afford. His carefully curated image as a successful architect, he had a growing void of debt and mismanagement. But it wasn't just about money. Mark's crimes weren't limited to his professional life. Investigators uncovered another, even more shocking secret. He had been leading a double life in a neighboring state. Mark had established an entirely separate existence. There was another woman, a mistress he had been involved with for nearly 6 years, and a child, a young boy who was the same age as Ben. He had rented a small apartment for them under an alias, funneling embezzled funds to provide for their needs while maintaining the illusion of stability at home. This clandestine life demanded constant juggling, and the strain of keeping it hidden had pushed him closer to the edge. Evelyn, unbeknownst to Mark, had begun to uncover his secret's emails. Ed from her laptop revealed that she had recently confronted about financial discrepancies she'd noticed in their accounts. She had also found text messages on his phone hinting at his infidelity. In her journal, Evelyn wrote about feeling betrayed and unsure how to proceed, torn between protecting her children and facing the devastating truth about her husband. She had started researching divorce attorneys and confided to Zoe Martin that she feared for her family's future. Mark, now under the threat of exposure, felt his carefully constructed world unraveling. His embezzlement would soon be discovered as his firm was undergoing an audit. If Evelyn went through with the divorce, not only would his financial crimes come to light, but he could also lose custody of his children and any hope of maintaining his second family. Backed into a corner, Mark began to devise a plan to eliminate the problem, his own family. The meticulous nature of the murders revealed Mark's methodical mindset. He had carefully researched poisons that could incapacitate his victims without leaving visible signs of struggle. Police determined that he had likely lacked the family's dinner with the substance, ensuring they would be unconscious before suffocating them individually. The chilling attention to detail in wrapping their bodies suggested not just a desire to conceal the crime but a disturbingly clinical detachment. The motive became painfully clear. Mark Carter was willing to go to unimaginable lengths to preserve his secret double life and avoid the consequences of his actions. Killing his family was in his mind the only way to erase the threat of exposure and reclaim control. What he didn't anticipate, however, was how quickly his crimes would unravel under the weight of evidence and the tireless pursuit of justice. The trial of Mark Carter became one of the most infamous cases in Willow Creek's history. The courtroom was packed every day with journalists, curious onlookers, and grieving neighbors who couldn't believe that a man who had seemed so normal could commit such acts. The prosecution wasted no time presenting its case methodically, unveiling the evidence that painted Mark as a calculating and cold-blooded killer. From the damning financial records to the surveillance footage and forensic analysis, each piece of evidence brought the horrifying reality closer into view. The prosecution detailed how Mark's mounting debt, the looming financial audit, and Evelyn's discovery of his double life had created the perfect storm for his actions. They laid bare his secretive existence, a mistress and a child in another state, and how he had channeled money to support this hidden family at the expense of his own. The jury listened in shock as emails, journal entries, and internet searches were read aloud, painting a picture of a man willing to destroy everything to protect himself from exposure and ruin. The forensic evidence was particularly damning. Chemical traces of the poison used to incapacitate the family were found in Mark's car, linking him directly to the method of their deaths. Even more chilling were the timestamps on his laptop, revealing detailed research on how to kill without arousing suspicion. How to make it look like they left on their own was one of the searches, underscoring his calculated plan to stage a disappearance after the murders. Mark's defense team struggled to counter the overwhelming evidence. They attempted to argue that the financial and emotional pressures had driven him to act irrationally, framing him as a man who cracked under immense stress, but their claims of mental instability didn't align with the meticulous planning behind the crimes. The jury found it impossible to view Mark as anything but deliberate in his actions. When the verdict was announced, guilty on all counts of first-degree murder, there was no celebration, only a heavy, somber sense of relief. Mark was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a punishment deemed appropriate for someone who had so thoroughly betrayed his family and community. His lack of visible Remorse only solidified public perception of him as a monster who prioritized his own interests above everything else. The aftermath of the murders left Willow Creek forever changed. Evelyn Carter was remembered as a woman of kindness and strength who fought to protect her children until the end. Emma Lucas and Ben became symbols of innocence, lost their vibrant futures stolen by someone who should have been their protector. The local community came together to honor their memory, creating scholarships and funding programs in their name to support young artists, athletes and budding scientists. Zoe Martin, devastated by the loss of her best friend, established the Carter Foundation, a non-profit organization aimed at helping families escape abusive situations and providing financial education to prevent exploitation. For Zoe, it was a way to ensure that Evelyn's legacy was one of hope and resilience. Mark's crimes became a haunting cautionary tale, a reminder of the devastating power of secrets and greed. As his story faded into infamy, the memories of Evelyn and her children endured, a testament to their impact on everyone who knew them. They were not defined by their tragic end but by the love, talent and joy they brought into the world, even if for far too short a time.